Welcome to Roots and Branches of Lehi, the podcast where we get to know the faces, stories, and lives that make up our community. I'm Ryan Harding, and I started this podcast as a way for us all to connect with the people we live alongside. Growing up in a small town, I learned that connections go beyond blood. They're built through shared experiences, friendships, and the moments we celebrate together. Each week, we'll sit down with someone new from Lehi to share their unique story, their passions, and what they love most about living here. So whether you've been here for years or just arrived, join us as we deepen our roots and reach out to our branches one story at a time. Welcome, Kay Christofferson, to Roots and Branches of Lehi. Excited to have you here on the podcast where we get to know you a little bit better and get to hear your story and stuff. So thanks for coming on. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate you inviting me. Glad to share some stories in that. Hey,
this will be fun. So let's start with, this is a podcast about Lehi, and the connection to Lehi. Tell us about your connection to Lehi. Where did you grow up here? You transplanted in? Tell me about that, I guess.
Well, that statue of David Evans that's in the Lehi City Center?
Yeah.
He's my great-great-grandfather.
Okay.
And on the other side, that's my mother's side. On my father's side, we've got the Christoffersons that go back to my great-grandfather.
Okay.
And I was born in the Lehi Hospital.
Okay.
That's no longer there. It's
I was going to say,
torn down.
What hospital are you talking? Okay. That's awesome.
I've been here all my life.
So you've been here, okay.
Generations.
Yeah. Okay. And tell me what you did for work and stuff like that, I guess, for that period of time.
So I graduated in civil engineering from BYU.
Okay.
And I got a job while I was still in school with Geneva Rock Products.
Okay.
It's part of the Clyde companies.
Sure, yeah.
And when I graduated, they hired me full-time.
Okay.
And then, so I didn't do a lot of design work, but I worked with civil engineers and others to do civil construction type projects.
Sure.
Roads and utilities, and worked on the light rail project for the Olympics, and just a lot of site work, sand and gravel supply, concrete, asphalt supply, and construction. So
okay, and we'll come back to that then. Tell me, so I guess going back to Lehi part, any favorite memories? I mean, what was life like growing up in for a large part a small town, right? For probably most of your life, I guess.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I think when I graduated from high school, there may have been about 8,000 people then.
Okay.
So most of my growing up life was, we go to school.
Yeah.
I lived across the street from the Lehi Elementary School, so we'd go over there a lot and play games, and we'd ride our bikes all over. We'd ride to Saratoga Springs or out to the Westfields and catch frogs. And so it was, left their doors unlocked. Yeah. It was just really nice.
Sure.
And we could spend time outside a lot. There were a lot of farms. We had a big yard and a garden, and so it was pretty peaceful. A lot of open space, a lot of cows and horses, and farms.
And did your what did your dad do for work?
He worked at Geneva Steel Plant.
Okay, he did too. Okay.
So that really helped Utah Valley a lot to have that steel plant. And a lot of people, it created some pollution and things like that people were concerned about, but for a lot of years it really helped the economy of Utah County.
Yeah, I've heard that before. It was because it was a big job producer, I guess, right? And so there's a lot of people that had that.
Yeah, it was a tough living, but it paid better than a lot of jobs.
Sure. Any favorite memories growing up here, as far as anything that stand out? And I guess, kind of a side question is, things have changed too, I guess. How have you dealt with that?
Well, it seemed like you knew everybody, and, people in the Lehi celebration, they would all come to the rodeo, and we didn't have to wait in line for tickets or get them ahead of time. We just pay for them at the door. And, and then we'd all show up at the parade, and everybody knew everybody, it seemed like.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite memories is when they'd bring the animals into the rodeo a few days ahead. All of us kids would ride our bikes down and walk around and climb on the gate, on the fences, and imagine ourselves riding one of those bulls.
And I'm sure your mom was happy that it was only imagining and not actually doing it,
exactly.
right? So.
But it was a tight community. At the time we had one stake in Lehi, one stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
And not that many wards. I think when I was born, they just created the 7th ward, which I was a member of.
Yeah. So again, small. Very small place. You've seen a lot of growth then, over the last, so many years, right?
Yeah, and I remember, all the kids from Cedar Fort and Saratoga Springs came out to Lehi to go to school and other activity, a lot of shopping and that.
Yeah.
Wasn't a big deal, and it was a straight shot out there. And
sure.
There was hardly anybody in between us and Cedar Fort, and then I think it was around 1985-ish. There were some thoughts of developing out to the ranches.
Sure.
And Eagle Mountain. And anyway, it started growing fast then.
Yeah.
And so that area grew really fast, and then Lehi was still growing fast at the same time, and it was a little more convenient because it's closer to the freeway, so
sure.
A lot of people tried to stay here. But yeah, I've seen property gobbled up and prices go higher, and it's a different dynamic.
It is a different dynamic, which there's I guess problems with growth, but there's also benefits that come with growth too, and stuff like that, right? And so kind of both. You mentioned your career in civil engineering and stuff like that, right? And so were you a part of some of that growth as far as some of the things that took place as far as building? You mentioned like light rail and stuff. Kind of speak to that, I guess, for a little bit.
So the construction industry just boomed in that time because of the growth, and people liked being here because the labor force was good. We had a lot of educational, universities and colleges, and so it was a good workforce, and people liked being here. The people were honest and hardworking, and so a lot of people liked coming here. So there were a lot of businesses that moved in, a lot of subdivisions, and a lot of opportunities to, build roads and site work for buildings. I feel like, now that I'm in the legislature and looking at things from, I'm on the chair of the House Transportation Committee. Yeah. And looking at it from that perspective, I feel like that our growth has gone so fast that it's hard to stay ahead of transportation needs and some of the other infrastructure that needs to sustain that kind of growth.
Yeah. Which, and I want to talk about some of that a little bit more too. What made you transition? I mean, so you mentioned, politics and stuff like that. What made you transition from engineering into politics? What, and when did that take place?
Yeah, so I was with Geneva Rock for a lot of years, which I said is part of the Clyde companies, and then they bought another company, H.E. Davis Construction. I went to run that for them. Yeah. And then we formed Sunrock, which is now, they just changed the name to Suncor. But the company was growing, but then in 2008, in the downturn, construction really got hurt then because people just couldn't, their homes were being foreclosed on and nobody was developing, and the growth just stopped. And so about end of 2010, the company just said, hey, we're going to offer early retirement packages for those who are executives. And I'd been there 32 years, so I thought, well, I'm gonna, and it freed up some money. So I went and took that money and bought some homes at the bottom of the trough.
Sure, yeah, good.
And I have 5 sons, and 4 of them were still in school and needing work. So we worked on those, gave them some summer work and work after school. So it was good. I really enjoyed that. And then about a year after I'd done that, someone came to me and said, look, there's a spot there, there's redistricting, there's a spot opened up. My district split into 3 districts, and so there was an opening for a legislative district for the House of Representatives that one person was running, and somebody came to me and says, we need someone else to run in this spot as well. We need another choice. And I said, well, I've got the time. I don't really know much about campaigning.
Sure.
I said, if you can help me understand that a little bit, that, you know, I have an interest in the issues, and I felt like I could, you know, I'd be interested in working in that area. So I went down that afternoon and filed, and the filing, that was a Tuesday, the filing ended on Friday. And so I was in the campaign. And a few weeks later was the caucus convention for the Republican Party. I barely made it through that because it was a big learning curve. My opponent had been campaigning for quite a while.
Sure.
So I made it through that, and then during the primary, our numbers just flipped, and so I won that. So that was in 2012.
Okay.
And so I started as a representative in 2013, 1st of January.
You know, you mentioned, you know, not good at campaigning, that different, you know, the politics side of it, but maybe that's actually what appealed to voters about you, was the fact that, you know, you're not a quote unquote politician, right? You know, you have that technical background and you know, of engineering and different things like that. And so how has that served you, I guess, you know, really, because you obviously have a background in understanding this. You've worked in the industry. You have that business background. This isn't, you know, a lifelong politician that's just trying to do it but doesn't really know what he's doing, right?
Yeah, and it helps to have real-world experience. And the legislature is a part-time legislature.
Okay.
It feels like a full-time job sometimes.
Sure.
But we have a 45-day session, and then interim every month where we go and talk. And then there's other things, but really, I'll bet I spend 60% of my time doing legislative work.
Yeah.
But because it's a part-time legislature, you're getting people that not just, you know, political science majors or attorneys. You're getting people who understand all aspects of the issues that we deal with. I mean, like, I don't know a lot about insurance, or real estate, like you're into.
Yeah.
But there are people in the legislature that do.
Yeah.
And there are not too many engineers in the legislature.
Yeah.
But it helps to have that background and credibility. That's one reason why I'm in the Transportation Committee and the Public Utilities, Energy and Technology, is because my background in civil engineering and construction, and so I understand some of those issues. And so it helps to have people from all walks of life that understand those things and come together and really help guide good legislation.
Yeah.
And if there's a problem, one year, the next year, we come back and say, that didn't work so well, we've got to adjust it or tweak it or whatever, and we'll change it. And sometimes we do that in a special session before the next year.
Yeah. And how long have you served? So you mentioned two committees, you know, House Transportation and House, what was it, Energy?
Public Utilities, Energy and Technology. And I also serve on the Retirement and Independent Entities Committee and the Transportation and Infrastructure Appropriations Subcommittee. Okay. And then on the Federalism Commission.
Wow. Okay.
And
so you're very involved, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, that's. Is that abnormal? I mean, I don't know much about this. So do most people serve in that many committees, or?
Most representatives serve in two standing committees and one appropriations subcommittee. Okay. Sometimes three standing committees, but the Federalism Commission's a little bit of an external committee right now. It's doing more and more, and I don't know, people don't understand federalism too much, but what it is basically saying it's drawing the line between the federal government and the states. Okay. And it's saying, you know, we have three branches of government, and we have the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive. They all compete for power. Sure. And that's what keeps balance of power. Sure. But there's also the states and the federal government that keeps that balance. Sure. Yeah. And that's and that's federalism. Okay. So, you know, there aren't too many things that happen now that we don't have overreach from the federal government in the state's business, because it's easy to have an executive order or to have some federal agency say, you need to do it this way. Sure. It's harder for states to say, that's not your constitutional jurisdiction.
Yeah.
We're going to push back.
Sure.
And sometimes it takes 50 states getting together. That's harder than just one person, executive,
Sure.
in the executive branch. So our goal is to kind of say we're going to educate people on the jurisdictional roles, and we're going to push back as much as we can in areas that we feel like there's been overreach, and that helps to, the founders say you need to jealously guard your jurisdiction or your area, and that's on purpose.
Sure.
Because that keeps a balance. That keeps one branch from overreaching and taking control.
Which is good. We want the separation of powers, right? You know, that's what makes a good government. So,
but the other committees are great. That's where the real work is done in the committees.
Okay.
You can spend more time. You can get more depth.
Yeah.
And people are on the committees that understand those areas. That's a place too where the public have input. They can come to the committee meetings. They can talk to the committee and ask questions or give their opinion.
Yeah.
And on the House floor, we don't get that opportunity to have public input. So the committee work is really important, and most of the work is done there. By the time it passes that, there may be, usually it passes the House after it's gone through the committee, but not always, because some people have different opinions that they debate and they bring up, and there may be things that are brought up that the committee wasn't aware of.
So you've been on those committees for a little while. Anything you're most proud of as far as any kind of accomplishments or things that you've seen or been a part of?
Well, I mentioned growth in our area, and one of the things I've been disappointed in is that we haven't looked ahead far enough to say, we know this area is growing. We need to preserve the corridor for freeway or collector roads or whatever to connect the cities to get through. For example, in Lehi, we've got the east-west area that comes clear from Cedar Fort over to American Fork, ties into the freeway there, and they really haven't looked ahead to say, what are we going to do to manage the future growth? And so one of the things I've done is I've gotten quite a few allocations or appropriations for money that is specifically for corridor preservation.
Okay.
So about 3 years ago, I got $60 million that goes into that. It's a revolving fund, so when the road's built, money comes back in.
Okay.
And then I got $20 million a year ongoing last year. And so that'll be money that they can go purchase land and preserve it so that, if roads, if houses and buildings, businesses are built on those areas that we designate for roads, if we didn't have that designation, then it costs so much more money for us to go in and buy a house for $1 million.
Sure, take it down,
And it's disruptive, and it's hard for neighborhoods. Plus businesses, the same thing. Yeah. It's expensive, and it's a lot better to plan up front, get the land while it's available. Yeah. So that's one thing that's that I've been happy about. But I think that I've done quite a bit of work in working with the state to streamline the state to become more efficient. When I was campaigning, people would come to me and say, "Why don't we look at cutting costs instead of raising taxes?"
Sure.
And I just said, "Yeah, you're right. We need to look at doing things more efficiently." Yeah. And so I've worked quite a bit with the state agencies to say, you need to understand your costs, and then you can control your costs.
Sure.
And so I run legislation to have them keep track of their costs. I've run some legislation about those who are supervisors in the agencies. They should be at will. They should be accountable, and if things aren't going right, we should be able to replace them. So it's not just time in the seat, but it's performance. And so I made some provisions for pay for performance, and So I'm continuing to try to streamline government that way.
Good. It's always good to be more efficient, right?
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know, I mean, that's always an area that we need to work on and stuff.
And I've been involved in cutting some taxes. I've ran some legislation where we cut income taxes a couple of times, and I've got some legislation this time where I want to limit the growth of property taxes.
Okay.
So the idea is, if a government entity has the money, they're going to spend it.
Yeah.
So sometimes pulling back and say, we're just going to say no, then it forces them to prioritize those things that are most important.
That's a good point. Sometimes it's a good point you just brought up, I guess, with because the government does want to just spend, like, okay, we have it, let's spend it. I've heard about this with other states and stuff like that, doing that sometimes on buying things that maybe they didn't need, but they had the money, so they're going to use it and stuff. And so, it's hard because in my own household, it's like, well, no, let's save it. Let's put it away, and if we need something for it. But I guess government doesn't always work that way.
Well, they don't have all the mechanisms to do it. We do have some rainy day funds that we say, to a certain point, we're going to put it in rainy day funds. But the problem with too much rainy day fund is there's no pressure to prioritize and become efficient. If you don't have the money, like in the downturn in 2008, they cut a lot of programs and they made it work.
Yeah.
And they used up some rainy day funds and things like that. But in good times, sometimes we need to say, look, let's pay off debt and bonds, and then let's put a little bit of money aside in the rainy day funds.
Sure.
And so we've done a pretty good job with that. And then if we have one-time money, we don't say, let's put it into a program that needs money every year. Let's put it into roads or something that we can say we've got ahead and we've built some roads, and we're not depending upon that the next year because we've done that project. Sure.
That makes sense. I know sometimes I always say, federally, I'm a conservative. Locally, I'm more of a liberal in the sense that, like, hey, I want better schools, I want better parks, I want better stuff locally. But, federally, well, I don't want, don't take my money, kind of thing. I'm more conservative that way. I think with parks and roads and different things like that, sometimes, schools, we need to spend the money, I guess, to make those better. But you bring up good points where we need to make sure we're not just wasting it and just putting so much money into those things, I guess. I don't know.
And then you have to say, what is the role of government?
Sure.
So really, the number one role is to protect our rights.
Sure.
And then besides that, the government sometimes says, okay, we're going to do projects or provide services that individuals can't for themselves, like build a road or water systems, things like that.
Yeah.
And so government will get together and say, we'll do that. And schools is a constitutional requirement to provide education. So those are all constitutional. One of the things that I've seen in the government that they've done is gotten more and more into welfare issues and that. And there's really, most people, they don't need the government to take care of themselves. They can take care of themselves.
Yeah.
So the government takes money from you and invests it and then gives it part of it back to you or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's really not a government role, I don't think. I think, and we've seen that because that's been expanded into Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and all those things, and they're good, but I would have been better off if I'd have kept that money in Social Security and invested myself.
Yeah.
I've been way better, and as an individual, I can pay for insurance and take care of my medical needs.
Yeah.
And maybe for those who are that are incapable, maybe there's a role that we can have there. But we've expanded it so much that now we've got couples who are, married couples who are healthy that don't have kids are getting Medicaid. And all that is going into that area that makes people more dependent. And we're trying to build, infrastructure and things like that, and replace infrastructure that's been around for years.
Yeah.
And we can't do it anymore because all that money that used to go to that is going to these social programs.
Sure.
So it's going to catch up to us, I think.
Yeah.
Got to be careful there.
How do you think Utah does on that? Obviously we're a very conservative state, right? How do you think we do as far as, in those areas?
Well, in Pew Research, I think it was, in Rich States, Poor States magazine, or a book that they put out every year, they say who has the best economic outlook.
Yeah.
And Utah has been the top since they started that, which I think it's about 17 years ago.
Wow.
That they started that.
Okay.
And so we're doing really well. I should have brought the list of all the things that the different groups
Sure.
rank Utah number 1, 2, or 3
Yeah.
in a lot of areas. So we're doing really good. We got to be careful because we're falling into some of the traps of some of our neighbors that are not doing so good.
Sure.
But for the most part, I'm really glad to be in Utah.
Yeah, sure.
not some of the states. So I think we're pretty well positioned. But, one thing I'm concerned about is the initiative process.
Yeah.
We elected not as a legislature to expand Medicaid because it was going to cost a bunch of money. We're going to have to cut out some other essential things and bite into transportation and education.
Sure.
And we said we don't want to do it. We can do it without it. And the initiative came up. And, of course, initiatives, it sounds good. People don't take a lot of time to read them. And they'll say, oh, this sounds good. We'll do it. But they don't. It's not debated on. It's not amended like regular bills are. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes we get people who agree to things that they don't really understand the full ramifications of what they're signing. But we just have to be careful with that process.
Sure. Going back to transportation and stuff like that. So obviously that's a big issue, on the, for the city council, the mayor, different things like that they're working on, and they only have so much control, right? And stuff like that. How is that progressing? You mentioned the money that's set aside for that corridor and stuff like that. I know they're talking about, maybe building a freeway on the north part of the lake and different things like that. Any status update on any of those things, or kind of?
So, it takes some coordination to get a lot of cities and Mountain Land Association of Governments, who coordinates with cities and the counties, and UDOT. It takes a lot for them to coordinate. And as the chair of the Transportation Committee, I thought, here's an opportunity that I can work with them and get them together, at least to start talking and say, how can we solve this problem, especially the East-West. And where do we go from there? When we still have areas of growth, and when we're at build-out, where are we going to go? By I think it's 2060 or some 65.
Sure.
We should double our population.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
And how are we going to do that? And a lot of people say, well, we'll do transit, and that's a piece of the puzzle, but that's not going to.
Yeah.
It's not going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
So what I did is I just said, let's just have a meeting with Eagle Mountain, Saratoga Springs, Lehi, and American Fork, and Utah County. Let's get with MAG, which is Mountain Land Area of Governments, or Mountain Land Association of Governments, and then UDOT, the Department of Transportation, and let's just have a meeting and say, these are the needs. And we had each of the cities and each of the organizations talk about what they thought needed to happen. So we met for an hour and a half. That was probably 8 months ago, I think. Okay. Then we kind of decided on a plan and started looking at things. Then we met again about 2 months ago with the same group, and we said, okay, where are we at? What's happening? And so there's a couple of studies going on that UDOT is spearheading and MAG is helping with, to say we need to know what the options are, what possible costs of those options are.
Yeah.
If we're going to go into the lake, the North Shore, or mid-lake, what's it going to take? What's down below there? What kind of structures are we going to have to pay for?
Sure.
And so right now they're getting some engineering companies together to put together proposals. They'll select from those proposals to find someone that we'll do that study, and it'll probably take a year to do that study. Then we can say, okay, we're going to pick one of these options. And it could be kind of expensive because, Pioneer Crossing is maxed out.
Yeah.
They're going to do some intermediate steps to have flexible lanes.
Yeah, the flex lane, yeah.
But that's not going to do the job.
Yeah.
And we're going to probably need to do stuff on Main Street, on Pioneer Crossing, on Pony Express, which is 1700 South, I think, somewhere.
Okay.
And maybe one of the lake options to handle all the traffic. And so we're saying not just one solution, it may be parts, many solutions, but we're going to come up with a plan, and then, we'll have to figure out a way to fund it. UDOT's going to put that on their list and try to prioritize it. MAG is going to have to be involved there a little bit because they're coordinating with the cities and the county. And it's a pretty big job when you get to that point because there's no clear corridor, and we may have to take out homes and businesses.
Yeah, yeah. Which, obviously we don't want to if we don't have to, but we also need to solve the problem, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
and plus I-15 is getting crowded, so we don't want to push everything onto I-15. Then we're going to have to look at Geneva Road and Redwood Road and Mountain View Corridor, and maybe take some of Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs down around the, south to either the Mid-Lake Crossing or further south. I don't know if that will work further south, but a Mid-Lake Crossing makes some sense.
Mid-Lake, yeah. So building a freeway across, and so when, so I've heard some of these ideas for years, they've kind of floated around and stuff. When does any of this, actually, boots on the ground, kind of that, when can we expect that kind of stuff, do you think?
Well, so an investigation, some of this research will take probably a year or more. Then you've got to figure out a rough plan and what the cost would be. Then you've got to say, okay, well, it might take 5 years just to fund it.
Yeah.
And then it takes a year to design it, and up to 3 years maybe to do the construction. So, and some of this could be done in phases, so we may be able to do some earlier than that. But
sure.
So I'm thinking a lot of this maybe 10 years away.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, which is hard because there's problems now, right?
Well, yeah, we should be building that now.
We should be building that now. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which I guess.
And it could accelerate depending on, if it becomes such a big problem that we say, we've just got to transfer some funds here to get this done. So it could be 5 years if it needed to be.
Sure. But if that doesn't happen, 10 years is more likely, is what you're saying. So okay. Yeah, it's hard. Everybody wants things done now. We live in a fast,
and we're still growing fast.
And we're still growing, and in fact, actually, you could argue we're growing slower right now because of interest rates and stuff like that. But if those do come down, now we're going to start growing probably a lot more because I think there's a lot of people that want to buy homes, that just can't right now.
Another situation too is water. We've got to be careful with water. There's not a lot of water, and it's, as a subdivision comes in, we actually use less water than the farmland that was there before.
Okay, sure.
But as we expand into sagebrush area, we've got to have. But the other complication is, Utah is owned by the federal government. 2/3 of Utah is owned by the federal government.
Yeah.
So it's federally controlled.
Yeah.
And that limits us a lot. And Senator Lee had some legislation to say, BLM land, Bureau of Land Management land that's close to cities can be accessible to expand the growth, and then our prices of land aren't so expensive. We talk about cost of housing. That's the biggest cost right there is the land.
That's true, yeah.
And then all of the restrictions and regulations that we have on gravel pits that supply concrete and asphalt, and restrictions on lumber mills and harvesting lumber in the forest. That's really catching up to us. We're not only having catastrophic fires, but we've got, so we waste that resource in fires where we could have been using that.
Yeah.
And And I think, there's a plan to open up some more of these roads that have been shut down recently. And that will help to provide some fire breaks and things like that. But lumber is really expensive, and that's one of the big costs of housing.
Yeah.
So, those decisions catch up to us eventually.
They do. And do you see some of that changing? I know with Doug Burgum, he was my home state, North Dakota. He was the governor there, and now he's over the Interior, Department of Interior and stuff like that. Do you see some of those things changing? From what I understand, they are working on trying to open up. I mean, he feels kind of the same way you do. Like, hey, we're wasting our resources. We have all these resources that we need to use. Have you seen anything on your level, I guess, with any of that?
I mean, that's going to affect Utah a lot because of so much BLM and Forest Service land here. So that will help us a lot.
Yeah.
And it will help those who want recreation because, there's some places that, you can't carry enough water to backpack in some of these places. So it'll open up that. And we've still got lots of room for people who want to get away. There's a lot of space that way. But, and the other thing is the federal government back in 1976 said, we're going to kind of stop turning land back over to the states. We're going to go to conservation. And they set up what they call PILT, payment in lieu of taxes.
Okay.
And that was supposed to be, say, since you're not getting taxes off this land, we'll give you PILT payments, equivalent amount of taxes, so that you can run your education and your government operations. Well, over the years, they've cut that down and cut it down to where it's really maybe a fourth of the lowest valuation of land.
Okay.
And some counties that have 95% federal land, they're struggling to survive.
Sure.
And so, the federal government really needs to step up and say, look, we're going to either honor our promises or let the states manage the public lands.
Yeah. You represent the district. Talk to me about some of the other challenges, I guess, you run into representing a whole district and stuff like that. Tell me some of the challenges that maybe people wouldn't think about with your job.
Well, a big part of the job is education, and so trying to provide the right education and make it efficient as well.
Sure.
And keep it updated with technology and the needs of, so when people graduate, are they graduating with the ability to produce something for their families, or did they just graduating something that was fun but has no value?
Sure.
And so just making sure that the educational process has they look forward, they can see the vision of where things are going and how to utilize that technology. I think they're making it easier for people who have been in an industry to get into education with that experience, because educators, they go through and get an education degree, but they don't always have the industrial background.
That real world experience.
And so I think they're making it easier for people to get in that way. But and then there's a lot of movement towards giving people choice.
Yeah.
Whether to stay in public education. I like public education. I don't have any problem with that. But I do think that there are people with different needs that they want to have a choice, and I think we ought to be able to give them a choice either in charter schools. Of course, charter schools are public education, but charter schools or private schools or home schools or whatever, people ought to be able to pick what they want.
Have that option, sure.
So education is one thing. We've talked about transportation.
Yeah.
And, recently we've talked about elections. That's an area that I haven't been involved too much in, but we've tried to make it convenient for elections to have mail-in ballots.
Yeah.
It's worked great, but it seems like no matter what system you get for elections, there's always going to be people who try to undermine it or to go around it, circumvent, whether it's hand in your ballots in person and then tally it up. There's going to be people who get in, so to undermine it, or whether you mail it in, there's going to be people that circumvent the process or try to hijack it. And there has been a lot of drama about elections.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes from the national news.
Sure.
Utah doesn't have quite as much of that, but I think we do have some, whether it's intentional or just something that's been overlooked. We've got to be real careful. So the simpler we can keep elections, the less opportunity for nefarious actions.
Sure.
And so we're always kind of tweaking it to make it better. But I don't know. I think nationally, there's an effort to say we're not going to do mail-in ballots anymore.
Yeah, I've read that. Yeah.
But so I don't know where we're going to go with that. That's been a big issue.
Yeah, I personally like it. Me personally, but but I get that. I don't know. It's very convenient. It gives me time to research people.
And maybe we can mail it out, give people time to research it, and then when they hand it back, they can take it in and have somebody verify their identity. Sure. And that would be good too.
Sure, that could be.
And show their license and verify who they are, because, that brings up another concern is immigration.
Sure.
And I think we're pretty good in Utah, but we like immigration. We like people who come in the right way through the front door that we can vet. We know who they are. There's a lot of people who come in that aren't, and we see problems with gangs and crime and drugs, and that's another area that we're really trying to be careful with.
Sure.
Is because you don't want to open up the door and say anybody can come in unvetted, and then we're dealing with all these problems.
Yeah.
So we like people who can come in, who are responsible, who can get a job, who can add to the economy, and help that way. But it needs to be legal.
Which, yes, do it the right way, like you said. Yeah. So you used to live here in Lehi then?
Yes.
So do you think that's helpful for you as far as being able to kind of still, you still shop in the same areas, you still maybe attend church in the area? Does that help you think to be able to be here still, so that you kind of are aware of the everyday issues? I mean, you mentioned transportation. Obviously, you drive these roads too, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, hey, I want this done too, right? So
and again, that's the other advantage of a part-time legislature is you get people who go in, who bring that knowledge of the local area to the legislature, and then they go home and they've, after the session's done, they've got to go live in that same world that they just made laws that affect the things that they do. So I think there's a real tie to, the experiences they have locally with what they produce legislatively. And, for me, I shop here. My kids went to school here. They're all grown now, but they played soccer here and ball and other ball games. And I attend church here. In fact, I have a responsibility now that I'm the branch president of a assisted living center. At Covington. And so that gives me a chance to get to know their needs and kind of see the world from a different angle. And so I'm involved there. I hear feedback from neighbors and people at church, and it helps. It helps ground you a little bit. Yeah.
Well, hey, on a personal note, I appreciate you doing that, because my wife's grandpa is at Covington right now. So, Maurice Cook is
Mo.
there. So Mo, there you go.
Okay.
Yep, that's my wife's grandpa.
Okay.
So we just had him over for dinner yesterday. So, so small world. That's awesome that you're doing that kind of work, just on a local level and stuff. So
that's
so
neat.
A lot of people don't have a lot of trust in government. Obviously, just, there's scandals, different things like that, right? So there seems to be a lack of trust, really not just in government, but in institutions in general, right? There's that thing. So how do you build trust with the residents? And I guess you've kind of already talked, just living here and serving and stuff, but do you come across that distrust?
Well, I mean, there's always going to be people that take advantage of their positions or their opportunities that they have for personal reasons, and you see that every day. And I remember UTA, they had some perception problems because of one or two things that happened that just persisted, and every time UTA did something, they'd go back to that. So the organization's been changed. I think they're doing much better,
Good.
But there's still opportunities for people to do things that ruin the reputation of the whole deal. And the legislature, recently we've had some judicial court rulings that, as a legislature, we're feeling like, we don't mind having the discussion, but we feel like the judicial branch is overreaching a little bit.
Sure.
And the media, they like to make it so that it's eye-popping. You're going to read the paper.
Yeah.
You're going to say, wow, what's this? And so the media is not always a friend of society. I mean, sometimes they undermine good things that are happening.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times they'll say, oh, the legislature's not doing this or that. Well, you really have to get into it and understand the details, and it's hard to. It's hard in sound bites to say,
sure,
well, this is the process, and we went through this process, and this is what the Constitution says about the roles, and so recently we've had this same thing with redistricting.
Yeah,
redistricting is a role of, the Constitution says it's the role of the legislature. Well, the initiative process came up that a few people were unsatisfied or dissatisfied with, and said we think that the people should come up with a committee to do this. Well, the committee came up with 3 plans. They couldn't even decide on which plan to use. They couldn't even agree. And a committee is selected. It's unaccountable to the voters, and you're going to have people with biases no matter where.
Of course.
So why not pick, let the legislators who represent those districts come up with the maps, and if you don't like that, they can be voted out. But you can't vote out a committee.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so we're having that struggle a little bit. But the thing that I've noticed most about it is people take these headlines and then project a conclusion there and come on and come and talk to us about that. And sometimes I don't have time to answer all of those.
Sure.
But sometimes I'll talk to some of these people and explain it to them, and they say, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's more complex than I realized. Oh, the judiciary is really kind of pushing past their responsibility. And so that's a healthy process, actually. That's part of, different authorities saying, we're going to protect our jurisdiction.
Yeah. And
that way you keep one branch from overriding the other.
Yeah.
But I think we've got to be really careful with what we read and the media. We need to look at lots of sources, radio, newspaper, internet.
Yeah.
You've got to look at all of that, and TV, and say, okay, what really sounds right? And then sometimes you got to dig into it a little deeper. And I wish I had more people calling me and saying, can you explain this to me? Instead of saying, this is crazy. What are you doing? They need to call and say, can you explain it from your position?
Yeah.
And I think maybe people get intimidated to talk to their representatives, but the House of Representatives are supposed to be closest to the people.
Yeah.
And so we try to have good feedback to the citizens who want it.
Yeah.
And we have a pretty good website, lehi.utah.gov, which tells all about it has recordings, video recordings of all of the committee meetings, the sessions on the floor debates in the House and the Senate. It tells everything about all of the legislators, their contact information, gives, policy briefs on a lot of different issues. So there's, it has the Utah Code, the Constitution in there. There's a lot of information in there that people can go in and dig into and find out information about subjects that really are concerning to them.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm saying is the people that get involved really understand it. They have the most influence.
Yeah.
And they can help drive policy. And I have people call me up. They say, I've got this concern or problem. They're civil about it.
Yeah.
They call up and say, can you help me with this? This is the problem we're having, or this is something that needs to be changed. And that's how That's how Utah code has changed, is through that process and submitting a bill and running the bill. I think if people understand more about that, they know how to do it. Right now, they say, I don't even know where to start.
Sure.
And it is a little bit intimidating. And even the caucus conventions and that, people don't understand that. But I would just say, take some time, talk to your neighbors, get into it, make some calls. Don't be intimidated to call your legislative representatives and others who are involved in it, and find out about it. Look at the website.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that the more people are involved, the better, they hold the legislature accountable, and the better decisions are made.
Yeah. Which, you brought up media and stuff like that, and obviously it's, we want to have a good, healthy media, but at the same time, you're right with the sound bites, because it's all about getting clicks and, people, doing those things. That an interesting thing that's happened is a resurgence in podcasts and stuff like that, right? Obviously, you're on one right now, where I think that long form content, right? It's uninterrupted. It's just a conversation. I think people get to know, the candidates a little bit better. I know, like, both candidates for president, in this last election were on multiple podcasts and stuff. I think it does seem to be a way to really kind of, because I think people understand that these issues are complex.
Yeah.
And so to just a soundbite or different things like that, it's like, that doesn't really capture, sure. And we're kind of wise to the fact that people have biases and they try to steer you one way too. And it's like, okay, what's more to that story, right? Because we've all, seen that with maybe, like our religion sometimes gets, posed one way, right? And it's like, okay, well, I know that's not true, so they must be doing that with other things too, and stuff. But I do like that there seems to be more of this long form content where people can really get to know and sit down, and because not everybody's going to call you. Not everybody's going to have a conversation with you, but maybe they listen to this and they, okay, hey, that makes more sense. I now understand how transportation, they're working on it. I wish, we'd done this 20 years ago or whatever, but like, it is what it is. I can see they're working on it. They're trying to do it fast and stuff like that, but there are steps that have to be taken, right? So exactly. I think that helps for people to just understand it, right? Because we just want to understand things sometimes.
Yeah, and some news, it's expensive to write in the newspaper or to spend much time on it on TV. And so podcasts have popped up because of that,
sure.
Because you can spend more time getting into the weeds. And, sometimes on the news and 6 o'clock news, they hit the highlights. Some people's eyes glaze over if you get into the details too much.
Yeah.
But it's important to take time to get in the details of some things, and you might not be able to get into the details of everything. That's why we have a representative form of government.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. I still have my own life, right?
Yeah.
I can't dedicate as much time as you're doing to it, but I can on some issues, I guess, right?
And, you try to pick representatives, elected officials who have good values, that understand your situation. They're not always going to vote exactly the same way you would, but sometimes, like, I don't just go to the session and debate and vote. We have lots of meetings leading up to that. Yeah. We go to different events and organizations and see what's going on, and we have discussions outside of the Capitol that we say, okay, we're getting information. We're hearing from lobbyists. A lot of people say, oh, lobbyists but we hear lobbyists on both sides of issues.
Sure.
And we understand that they're getting paid by certain people that represent their position, but we understand that, and we say, okay, I'll listen to you, I'll get that side of it, I'll listen to the other side, I'll listen to my neighbors, I'll listen to these people, and pretty soon you're getting a picture in your mind what's happening, and other legislators are doing the same thing, and then we come together and debate it, and we come up with a vote, and hopefully it's right, and if it's not right, typically within 2 or 3 years,
You'll know.
It's changed. No,
okay.
It's adjusted, amended.
Okay, good. Do you see, sometimes, like, obviously, Utah is very conservative, right? So do you see ever any problems in debating that, where if everybody's Republican, there's less debate, or do you see, still within the Republican Party, there's still a lot of debate there? I mean, any thoughts on that with?
Yeah, we are a supermajority.
Yeah.
But even then, we're not like Congress. The Republicans in the Capitol, we listen to the Democrats, or right now we've got one member of another party, but we listen to them, and if they have good information, then we vote for it. If they come up with a good bill that we like, we don't just say just because it's from that party we're not going to vote for it or support them. We say if they bring something good, we'll vote for it, and hopefully they do the same thing with stuff that we propose. But some people say, oh, is it one side? Well, we hear a lot of different opinions or ways of doing things. We get a lot of feedback, and it's kind of like a husband and wife. Even though you're on the same, even though you're working together, there's different ways of doing things, and you don't always agree that way. But I think we get enough feedback that we can make good decisions. And the reason politics is local is because the people in our area like certain things. That's why they vote the way they do. Sure. And that's why they accept the candidates they do. In other states, they might be more liberal or look at things differently, and they can vote that way. And that's the great advantage of having separate states that can do what they want. And if you don't like this state, you can move to another state.
Yeah, that's true.
And a lot of people are doing that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But it's great to have that interaction. But sometimes people say, oh, you didn't listen to me because you didn't vote the way I did. And I said, well, there's 45,000 people in my district. Yeah. I might not listen to, I listen to everybody, but 30,000 people want it this way and 15,000 want it this way. So just because I didn't vote the way you wanted doesn't mean I didn't listen to you.
Sure. Obviously, we mentioned a little bit of your service in your church and stuff like that. Tell me how your faith has influenced serving in the legislature. How has that been a part of who you are there?
Yeah. So when you make decisions, everything's based on something, Sure. And our founding fathers, they based a lot of the laws and the Constitution on moral principles that are time-tested. And a lot of those come from the Bible. A lot of those come from, thousands of years of society, the Roman Empire and things like that. And they were pretty amazing people that understood history. Most of them were very religious. Yeah. And they understood that our rights came from God. And those rights the government is to protect those rights. And so when you have basic principles that, I'm not going to kill or rob somebody of their property. Yeah. I'm not going to do things that harm other people from being free and exercising their agency. Those are moral principles that are taught at church. And where else do you learn those? You don't hear of a lot of education where they're talking about moral principles because they get in trouble for doing that sometimes. Yeah. And so I think church is where you learn moral principles. And our form of government, and some of our founders said this, that it's set up for a moral people. It can only survive with a moral people because, the reason you have to make laws is for people who don't control themselves. Yeah. Really, if everybody controlled themselves and obeyed the law, you think of how many laws are just tweaked or amended for people who are, selling drugs or stealing or taking advantage of something. And we would be so much better off if people would say, okay, I'm going to take these time-tested values that are presented in the scriptures and in writings of history that have proven to be valuable, then we wouldn't need so many laws, and we'd have more freedoms. The more laws and regulations we have, the less freedoms we have. Obviously you have a family and stuff like that. How is your serving
affected your family, doing this? Do you have children that are interested in going into politics too, or engineering, I guess,
I think they have more interest in, they can see what I'm involved in and how easy it is to be involved in politics. And so I think they have interest in the issues, and so our family discussions are really interesting that way.
Sure.
The two things you don't talk about are politics and religion. Well, we like talking about both of those.
You talk about those? Okay, that's good.
And so, but I don't know that they have a desire to jump into it because it takes a lot of time. It's really, we get maybe $20,000 a year to do it, which covers some of the expenses, and some of that goes for taxes.
Sure.
But it takes a lot of time, and fortunately, when I first started, my kids were a little older. I had 5 at home. 1 was at school, so 4 at home, and they were older, so I could do it. But I'll tell you what, if I was a young legislator, like some of them are, that I had to take a lot of time with my family and go to soccer games and things. It would be hard to do, and it would be, because there are so many extracurricular things you do as a legislator. It would be hard to do all that, but I'm glad I was kind of retired at the time and my kids were older. I feel for people who have a family who depend on that income from their job, that they've got to work full time. A lot of legislators have, some family business where they help out, or jobs that the owners want to help them out, and so they give them flexibility with their time. So it's tough, but it is kind of a sacrifice. It is a service.
Sure. And that's I've interviewed several people on obviously this local level, and that's one of the things that stands out to me is this. This is less, and maybe it's because on a national level we see kind of the fame, so we think everybody in politics is looking just for the notoriety, the fame. And I would argue that on the local level, it seems to be mostly just service is really what I would.
Most people don't even know who I am.
That's really exactly it. Yes, exactly. And I think you're okay with that because you're just, hey, I'm just serving. This is what I'm here to serve.
Yeah, it's good. I don't need to be in the public. In fact, this venue is a
little uncomfortable, right?
Nervous.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because you just prefer to, hey, I just put my head down and work, right?
Right.
Just do your thing. And so, over the next 10 years, are there pieces of legislation or things that, to obviously help Lehi over the next 10 years? Obviously, we already mentioned transportation and stuff like that. Other things on the horizon that you see, trying to make Lehi and obviously Utah in general a better place over the next 10 years?
Well, yeah, it's pretty popular. There, people are still moving here. I think growth is one of the biggest subjects that we talked about. So over the next 10 years, it's just looking out ahead long enough that you can make adjustments early on, so that you don't get caught flat-footed. Water, power. We haven't talked about power. Power is a big deal, and especially with the data centers coming in and other. With technology the way it is, we use a lot of power. I think we're going to have to look at nuclear more. It's, the technology's there where it's safe. In fact, there's been less people killed over the years through nuclear than there has been with even rooftop solar or whatever, because a lot of people.
Okay.
But the technology's there where they have it. It's safe. They can do molten salt reactors with thorium instead of uranium. That's a safer way to do it. The fuel is consumed in the process, so you don't have leftover rods or whatever. And even the leftover rods for uranium, they're finding ways to reuse those and control it. So nuclear's got to be part of the solution. It's reliable, it's clean.
Yeah.
It's you can access it any time, not just when the sun's shining or the wind's blowing.
Yeah.
But so our position in the state is everything,
Yeah.
But it ought to be a free market decision. It shouldn't be the government putting their thumb on the scale and saying we like this better or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think if we let the free market make those decisions, we're going to have a better product. It's going to be more stable. people are going to be more incentivized to improve it because, if we give an incentive to one industry, then it disincentivizes another industry that could be advancing faster.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just don't think that's government's responsibility to unbalance the playing field, put their thumb on the scale. So, but so power is going to be a big deal. Water, we need to probably put some more reservoirs in.
Yeah.
We haven't done that for years and years, and I think you can only conserve so much, and when you conserve, that means water's not going down the Great Salt Lake, so it's drying up.
Yeah.
And we're not recharging our aquifers because we're not letting it go down in. There's some that evaporates, but that also moderates our climate a little bit and helps. So more than just conserving, we've got to look at water storage so that we can have an abundance of water, and maybe even, some of the out of the box kind of solutions is to get a pipeline from the Snake River.
Sure.
Bring it in.
Sure.
Or, we've got the Lake Powell pipeline that we're looking at and other things. And I think those resources are meant to be used, and we ought to use them.
Yeah. Good. You started this podcast mentioning the statue, and stuff like that. You have kids, grandkids. What do you hope that they remember about you, as they look at grandpa or dad or great grandpa or, kind of thing? What,
other than I give them candy when they come and visit.
Hey, and candy's important, right?
I don't know. I try to teach them to be hardworking and to be responsible and be good citizens, things like that. I don't know that I talk about it. It's an item of discussion. I try to show them that.
Sure.
And hopefully they can look at example of my wife and I and say, yeah, this has worked out good. And I know some of my kids, when they've gotten married and gone off, they say, boy, I didn't recognize how good we had it and some of the things we had, but I can see that they're trying to emulate some of those things, and they all have good families and good spouses and good jobs. So that's kind of a payoff. But I think just having them look at life differently and or maybe not differently, but more in depth, and saying, yeah, that's what creates good environment is some of these decisions that are made in the legislature or in the church or whatever. These are things that build a good society. I hope that they can see that and emulate that and keep doing that in their family.
Sure.
Perpetuate that.
And I guess, kind of the last question, similar to that one, but, what do you hope that maybe the community would know, as far as legislation and different things like that? What things would you like the community to know that they can do, I guess, to make things better?
Yeah. It's not that hard to get involved.
Yeah.
And people are intimidated by it. So I would just say, if there's something that concerns you, get involved, do something about it, kind of get outside the box. It's really uncomfortable. For me, when I got into running for the legislature, it was like, I got to promote myself. This is really awkward.
Yeah.
And those are things I really don't like to do, but it's like, you've got to get involved enough to understand things a little more in depth, whether it's at church or at school or in politics or whatever. Those who get involved are the ones that make the decisions.
Sure.
And when people know that you're involved in that, they look at you like, well, you're an example. We can do that too. I think just our education system needs to do a better job, I think, of teaching civics.
Yeah.
And the background of how government works. I think that would be helpful. But, maybe just take less time watching TV or whatever. Get involved.
Sure.
One way or the other. I got involved with the city. I was on the Roundup committee, the parade committee, my wife and I, and we did that for a few years. And then I was on the Board of Adjustments.
Okay.
And on the Recreation Committee.
Okay.
And those are good things to help me get involved, and you don't have to be something that's, like state senator or state congressman or whatever,
Sure,
U.S.
sure.
congressman, but
Sure. Yeah.
just get involved and go to caucus meetings and call us.
Yeah.
Don't, we work for the citizens.
Yeah.
So call us and talk to us and be civil about it, and you go a long ways when you ask questions and give your ideas and recommendations. But there's nothing worse than getting an email that says, "I demand this."
Sure.
You're my representative. I demand this.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, oh, really?
Yeah. Really? That's it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. I'm 30,000 others represented too, right?
Yeah,
And they demand others.
that. But if people call up and say, "Hey, I've got this concern. Can you help me with it? Tell me about it. Let's talk about it."
Yeah.
That's fine. Or if people have a question about, we were talking about redistricting, if they call up and say, "Tell me about this
Yeah.
before I make a decision.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you. I want to talk to others," and
Yeah.
and then they can understand it more depth. But it's hard for people to take the time. It's hard for people to get out of their comfort zone to do that. But
Sure.
But I appreciate people calling.
Well, it sounds like that actually makes a difference with you. I mean, that's something that people can do, especially when they do it in a civil talking way, right? Where it's,
Right.
they're actually talking to you. They're actually trying to understand you probably too, of where you may be coming from and stuff. So,
I've run several pieces of legislation based on feedback from constituents, and I have a meeting Wednesday with someone that says, I've got some concern about, I think it's in real estate actually, and
Sure.
some things, some concerns how this is working.
yeah.
Can we talk about it? Maybe there's some changes in the law that we can make.
Okay. There you go. There you go. So again, that person's having an influence just by reaching out and being
Exactly.
a concerned citizen, I guess, right?
Yep.
In a good manner, in a contentious way, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So
And I'm lucky because I'm retired, but there's the legislators that working full time and have families that are home.
sure, that would be harder.
And it's tough. So you got to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt.
Sure. That's fair. Okay. Kay, this has been great. Great get to know you. Great to see what you're doing. I think you're doing great things, and you continue to serve and make a difference in the community. And I appreciate all you're doing, and both on a state level and even on a very local level, where obviously we have that connection with my grandfather and stuff. So, but appreciate all you're doing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's good to be involved. I've learned a lot, and it's great to get to meet a lot more people in
Yeah.
my district, and I represent half of Lehi and half of American Fork.
Okay.
So it's been good that way, and appreciate you taking time to visit.
Yeah.
It's a good chance to kind of explain some of these things more in depth.
Yeah. Nope. I love it. So thank you. Appreciate you coming on.
You bet. My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on Roots and Branches of Lehi. I hope today's story helped you feel a little more connected to the people who make up our community. Remember, every person here has a unique story, and together, we're what makes Lehi feel like home. If you know someone who would be a great fit for this podcast, please fill out the form in the show notes so we can reach out and schedule an interview. We'd love to hear from you. A big thank you to our sponsors, the Work Harding Home Mortgage Team and Play Harding Nightly Vacation Rentals, for supporting this show and helping us bring our community closer together. Until next time, keep growing those roots and reaching out to your branches. Take care.